What is going on, people? I am so glad you are here on this beautiful Sunday. Just trying to get everything ready for you. I have a great show to give you, and I hope you enjoy it. So, I am back from my trip in Turks and Caicos. What a wonderful trip it was. The weather was great, the people were great, the food, you name it, everything was great. And while I was out there, it made me think about something that I always think about. So, I'll start off by saying this before I get to the point. A lot of time when I talk about trips, I just use the word travel, 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 travel. Now, that can get tiring hearing the same word travel. Travel is just basically going from one place to the next, but there's more to your trip and your experience. So I want to really, when I talk about it, touch base on more of the experience and what you want to take away from each place you go to. And I spoke about that of not buying souvenirs and wanting people, friends and family, to enjoy the experience and be able to go to the certain places that I go to. So one of the things that I really enjoy about going to so many different places is the cars. So I've been around cars my whole life. My father's a mechanic as well as he sells cars since I was young. I also sold cars. I also know a lot about cars. I know the value, etc. I wasn't I never really had the interest in working on them, even though I know how to do certain things. Like, you know, I might do it if I have time or if I want to do it. But my thing has just been all around cars. I remember when I was 16, I missed school just to go to the DMV to take the test. I passed it, and I remember wanting to drive that same day. My father told me, relax. That's not how things are. He told me to really relax. And when I was 17, I got my first car, which is very rare in New York City because we got a junior license. In other words, you weren't supposed to really drive with it in New York City. You could drive with it in like Westchester and Long Island if you have someone with you with a regular license. But I remember that year, I had my own car and I was driving, you know. I only got pulled over once when I was 17. I was scared because they set up like a roadblock when I was living in Brooklyn, and I think they just let me go. I think they just looked at my car. I didn't have tints, and they just let me go. And I just remember saying, "Man, I can't wait till I'm 18 to actually get a regular license, so I won't be frightened." So that was pretty much that. But like I said, been around cars my whole life, had a really big love for it, still to this day. And what I love so much about going away, all these years I've been able to go to other countries and see what's in their market compared to our market. Back when I was growing up, they had French cars here, the Citroen, the Peugeot, they had the Renault, and currently now there are no French brands being sold in the U.S. market. They also had Italian brands, Fiat, which came back a couple years ago. I don't know how strong they're doing. They also had Alfa Romeo. They kind of brought that back with some new designs. So we don't have Spanish cars in this market. So it's good to see what we have, and then it's good to go to Europe and there's brand new French cars and they look good, and I'm like, man, why don't we have it here? And like, it's so stylish and etc. But I know that each market has a different taste. Americans typically like larger cars. When gas starts to go up, then we like fuel savers. Europe, they like small cars, not only because of the fuel, but their streets are small and more narrow. So that's why they have the smaller cars. You go in Europe now, and they still have Yugos there. They're small, tiny cars that you could see in any European city, and I think they're 3 speed, manual transmission, and I think they're 3 cylinder as well. I think they're 3 cylinder as well, maybe even two, which is crazy. It's just a small car, but anyway, that's what I enjoy. So while I was in Turks, right, as usual, you will see these cars pass by. So like, oh, you'll see like here it'll be like, the Lexus truck, the small one, the RX model. You'll see it, but it's a Toyota. And you'll see another car and you're like, oh, it's an Infinity here, but it's a Nissan over there. Or I took a jitney, as they call in Turks and Caicos. They call it cabs, jitneys in certain places, um, in different countries. Even in Miami, they have jitneys. In the Philippines, they have something called a jitney. So just anytime you hear jitney, just think of like some type of cab or car service or whatever, or a ride share kind of situation. So I was in this vehicle. It's like an Acura TL, but in Turks, it was a Honda. So it led me to what I always think. I'm like, wow, I don't know if people know that a lot of times in America, we get sold the bigger brand name, the marquee name, but almost everywhere else, they get sold the regular brand. In other words, we're spending more for the same kind of thing. So I'll talk more about that, but let me give some story and psychology behind it. So back in the late 70s and 80s, as the Japanese car brands got in the market, it became very popular. Great design, very good price, very fuel efficient. As people know till this day, you'll always hear about Japanese car being reliable, and if you treat it right, it'll run forever. You'll always hear that from people that like cars, mechanics, whatever the case may be. You hear these things. So the U.S. big three, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they were becoming threatened by the fact that all these Japanese cars are being sold here in the U.S. So they put like something called a voluntary export restraint, I think it was called. So pretty much the U.S. government said that. So I'll say like in 1981 they put this restraint that only 1.6 million Japanese cars can be sold here per year. So that was supposed to last just for 3 years, I think from 81 to 84. But then they kept extending it. But each time they extended it, they kind of like raised from 1.6 to 1.8 or something like that, where, they they kept extending, increasing the amount of cars that can be sold, but it was still some restraint. So what the Japanese automakers started to do, they just smarten up, open the market up. So Acura started first. Honda started first by making Acura become available in the U.S. market. They said, okay, we can sell X amount of cars, but if we make a luxury brand, we can obviously raise the costs. In this way, the money we naturally would lose by having a cap on how many cars we could sell. We'll make it up by having a luxury brand. So Acura was the first luxury brand in the U.S. Nissan came with Infinity, and then Toyota came with Lexus. Both of those came in '89. So this is why we have luxury brands here, because what the government imposed on the Japanese automakers, and then they were forced to create these brands. Well, forced to make it become available here. So in essence, Americans are paying more for some type of emblem that costs like nothing, right? And let's say you're paying, let's say $15,000 difference, $20,000 difference just for the name, like literally the plastic name on the car. You're paying like 20 grand for it because literally it's like the same car. For those of you, the next time you travel, I don't know if you guys are into cars or you would even notice that. But the next time you travel, do look at that because literally we'll just, and I've noticed that years ago when I first started traveling, because you'll see the same shape body cars, and obviously you know the parent company, like literally is the same exact car, the interior, whatever, like the shape, everything is just the emblem. So Americans are paying more, while the rest of the world are really paying the normal prices for like the Honda, Toyota, Nissan, and we're just paying more, and it's crazy. And so yeah, and it just always stopped me in my tracks whenever this happened. And a fun fact is, until this day, Infinity, right? The brand Infinity is not even sold in Japan. And another fun fact is, as of late, Lexus was introduced to America in '89, and it was introduced to Japan in '05. So 1 year after I got out of high school, they just started selling cars under the under the Lexus brand. So it's pretty cool. Then you had other brands. I'll end it off by saying this. Then you had other brands, other Japanese brands doing like joint ventures. So Ford did like a joint venture with Mazda. Chrysler did a venture with Mitsubishi. I think also GM did one with Isuzu, and like onward and onward. And I remember this too from growing up. Before I knew all of this, I was just very observant because growing up, my father used to sell cars, even to this day, and I used to be there for hours on end. And I used to notice, man, these cars have similar bodies. Like from a young age, I knew that. For example, I ended off, but for those people who know what a Ford Ranger is, Ford Ranger is a pickup. And I used to notice, man, the Mazda B1000, I think is the B1000. They have different models. It slips my head right now as I'm doing this video, but I know these vehicles. The body is the same. Like, so pretty much they kind of collaborated over that because, you know, these restraints. And if we go in the truck world, my father sells like or exports Isuzu MPR trucks, small box trucks, and they also have a GMC truck that's basically the same thing. So you did see some collaboration between car brands. And lastly, I'll make another one that comes to my head. The Toyota Corolla is basically similar to the Geo Prism, like the body and everything. So it's crazy. So anyway, thank you for watching. This was just something on my mind. So when you travel, try to find something that interests you that maybe you can kind of look for in each place. And we all like to compare stuff. So find something that you can do constructively. I don't know. Find magnets or something in every place, how they make them, or I don't know. Some people drink, so find beer. I don't know, something that you can look for whenever you go to each place. Something you keep your eye out for. It doesn't have to take up your whole trip. It could just be something that you pay attention to when you go to each place. But thank you for watching. Please check out my IG pages, David Durang, but also